Good evening, everyone. My name is Jose Bernal Munoz. And before I start sharing a little bit about myself, I wanted to start my part with asking you all a question. What are some of the things that you all hear about immigrants and refugees in media, by friends, you've been told by neighbors in the community? You can go ahead and shout some of those things out.
Time to take people's jobs away.
Yes. Thank you all for sharing. So it's really important to acknowledge that what I asked was, what are the things you all hear about the community, about immigrants and refugees? I didn't ask what were the negative things you hear about immigrants and refugees. And it's important to acknowledge that even now in the media still portrays immigrants and refugees in a negative lens. So that's why it's important agencies like FaithAction, New Arrivals Institute, and all of the other organizations to not only provide services to the families who need it, who are arriving to our community, but also to do the education to the greater community about what does it mean to be an immigrant, what does it mean to be a refugee, and also acknowledge the gifts that these families have to offer to our community as well. 2021, I know it was a difficult year because of the pandemic. We were in the midst of the pandemic, but 2021 was also a very important year for FaithAction International House and also for myself on a personal level. For FaithAction, it was able to celebrate its 25th anniversary in the community. And what it does, it serves and advocates alongside of thousands of immigrants each year, and also educates and connects our diverse population across lines of culture and faith, turning strangers into neighbors. For me, it was the first time that I was able to call this country home officially. Last year, I was able to naturalize, and this process took 22 years. 22 years, which I think is also another misconception that many people have in the community about, well, why don't they just get online? Why don't they, just apply? I was brought to this country. Well, my goal, in this conversation is to share a little bit about myself, my journey as a first-generation immigrant, and how I've been able to give back to my community through the work at FaithAction. So I was brought to this country at 5 years old. I am originally from Coahuila, Mexico, which is a northern state of Mexico that shares a border with Texas. So home is a couple of hours away from Texas. And my family brought my brother and I at a very early age with the hope of chasing the American dream. And that was to provide a better education for me and my brother, and also a better socioeconomic standing. One of the things that my brother and I were taught at a very early age by my family was the importance of always working hard, never giving up and never forgetting where we're from. As a family, we had to also go through the whole cultural language barrier and overcoming that situation. And I, as the eldest son, was expected to be the voice, the advocator for the family, the navigator for the family in all these systems. But one of the things, I always saw my family working hard. I always saw my dad always working in labor-intensive work, in construction, my mom always in factories or in doing housekeeping duties, multiple jobs at once, and bring bread to the table. But one of the things that was never talked about in our family was our immigration status. That was never something that we discussed. I grew up not knowing the importance of having a social security number, what that meant. I did not understand what having working authorization in this country meant. And I also did not even enjoy the simple things as having a state-issued ID or a driver's license. And for me, those conversations never happened in my household, and I feel like it's important for a lot of families who have undocumented or limited status youth to have those conversations at a very early state, so that they can also be aware of some of the hardships they're going to face, so that they can be proactive on how they can, reach out to different agencies to get the assistance that they need. Again, I grew up with none of this information, and I think part of that was because my family did not know what also that meant and the importance of that as well. Until I reached my high school graduation. So I graduated as a salutatorian, and I was academically excelling. I applied to many colleges like all my peers did, and I got accepted to all of them. But instead of, having a good time and celebrating, I found myself having a lot of difficult times coping, and I also fell in a depressive state because I found out that I was not going to receive assistance from the government like FAFSA. I could not apply to scholarships because I did not fulfill citizenship or social security number requirements. I would have to pay out-of-state tuition and not in-state tuition, although I fulfilled all of the requirements for in-state tuition, and I would have to pay 2 or 3 times more than the average student to go into school. And all that would mainly come out of my pockets. So I felt, this was the end of my education, and I did not know what to do. What was difficult for me was I did not have a support system in the sense of how to navigate myself within the education system. My parents were always there. My family has always been there to support me, and encourage me to go on. But they did not finish school they didn't finish their schooling back home, and they do not know how to navigate the educational system here. And the folks that I had direct access to support me were my high school counselors, and they shared with us. And again, I was one of many peers who were in the same situation as I was. They said, we just don't know how to work with students like you. So we felt lost until I started looking for resources, like I have always had to do for my family. And I came along with a friend. I encountered a friend of mine who took the time to explain to me what was the difference between private and public universities, what are the pros and cons. And I decided to come to Guilford College one day on campus just to apply, and I met the wonderful being of James Shields. I'm not sure if you all know. Yeah, and also was introduced to the Bernal Scholar Program. So I still to this day say I owe my education to James Shield and also to the Bernal Scholar Program, because if I was not admitted to it, I would not have been able to advance my education in the States. I graduated in 2018. I'm a proud Guilford College alum and also a Bernal Scholar. And while I was here in college and also part of my high school experience, I became the voice, not just for my family, but also for my community. So I started becoming more and more involved in, social justice movements, more around immigration, because that was affecting me and my community directly. The first agency that I got involved with was Americans Friends Service Committee. I began to advocate for immigrant rights. I got involved heavily with the in-state tuition movement, was protesting, anti-immigration bills that were trying to be proposed at a state level. And then in 2016, I was introduced to FaithAction International House for the first time. I started FaithAction as an intern through the legal department. The reason why I did this internship was because I wanted to be, and I continue to, strive to be an immigration attorney and practice law, because I saw the impact that an immigration attorney had in my life and the life of my family. From someone who had limited status to then being able to adjust status through the work of an attorney. In that collaboration, it changed my family's life and it changed mine. It opened so many doors. It gave me so many opportunities. And I wanted to be that person for many people in my community as well. So in 2018, at FaithAction, I also became a DOJ accredited representative, and I started to also represent clients to renew their DACA and apply DACA for the first time, and I continue to do that at FaithAction as well. Fast forwarding 2022, I'm also happy to say that I'm currently serving as the interim executive director at FaithAction International House, and I have the responsibility and the honor to pave the way for the vision and the mission of this agency with a very supportive staff. FaithAction for the past 25 years has served thousands of families who have knocked at our doors with emergencies, developed many beautiful relationships with community organizations to make sure we love, serve, and protect our newest neighbors. Like I shared with you all, part of my FaithAction experience, I also was a case manager. So I was working one-on-one and being that support system for families, directing them to resources. That was navigating the healthcare system, the schooling system, having them have access to resources like employment, housing, referrals to attorneys, helping families who were affected by the unnecessary detention deportation that was happening in our communities. And we tried to provide a holistic case management and strive to provide a holistic case management because that's what our community deserves, dignity and respect. We also do a lot of education and community advocacy. In August, we had our Unity Walk for the first time after the pandemic. And over 100 people came out to march alongside of us to remind the community that we need to work towards an immigration reform, that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And this upcoming November, we're going to actually host again our multicultural Thanksgiving event, which is meant to bring different folks from different backgrounds to a round table to share a meal, to start a conversation with the hopes of turning strangers into neighbors. And then lastly, one of the programs that Faith Action is well known for is the Faith Action ID program, which is a community-based ID. It is meant to help folks have a form of identification, those who are not eligible for a state or government-issued ID, so they can access services and feel more part of the community. I think the most important and most beautiful part about Faith Action is not only are these families knocking on our doors with emergencies, but we also acknowledge that they have tremendous gifts to offer to our community. And we try to connect them and for them to make an impact in the community as well. So that's why I will emphasize it is important for you all to support and be part of the work that Faith Action, New Arrivals Institute, Church World Service, CNNC, agencies in our area that work with these communities so that we can make a bigger impact in many lives. Thank you.